Okay? You know, the biggest reason you can never reach their full potential is because they're looking at life through the wrong lens. They're standing at ground level, staring up at a wall that feels 10 stories high, and they think, there's no way I can get over that. That's the perspective of limitation. And the problem isn't always the wall itself. It's how you're seeing it. Because the truth is, the higher you elevate your perspective, the smaller that wall becomes. Think about it like this. When you're on the ground, a mountain looks massive, intimidating. You can't even see what's on the other side. But if you rise above it, if you get into an airplane and look down suddenly, that same mountain looks like a bump in the earth. Nothing changed about the mountain. What changed was your position. And that's exactly what happens in life. When you change your mental altitude, the problems once looked impossible start to shrink. Most of us live with our faces pressed right up against the problem. Bills due, a job you can't stand, a dream that feels too far out of reach. And when you're that close, all you can see is the problem itself. But thinking higher means you step back, you rise up, and you remind yourself this problem is not the whole story. Weakest, it's just one piece of a much bigger picture. Psychologists call this reframing, taking the same situation, but looking at it through a different frame. And that simple shift can change your entire experience, because what you focus on determines how you feel, and how you feel determines what actions you take. If you only see the obstacle, you'll freeze. But if you see the opportunity hidden inside it, you'll start moving. I'll tell you something about limitations. Most of them aren't real. They're mental ceilings we build ourselves based on fear, comparison, or past failure. You hear people say, I can't do that. I don't have enough money. I don't have the right connections. I don't have the education. But here's the thing, some of the most successful people in history started with none of those things. What they had was a different perspective. Where others saw barriers, they saw possibilities. When you think higher, you start asking, why me? And you start asking, why not me? You stop saying, I can't. And you start saying, how can I? That little change in language opens doors in your mind. It forces your brain to search for solutions instead of excuses. That's the power of perspective. Now, thinking higher doesn't mean ignoring reality. Doesn't mean pretending your problems don't exist. It means refusing to let your problems define you. It means choosing to see beyond the immediate struggle and recognize that every challenge is temporary, every setback is a setup, and every closed door is an invitation to find a better one. Philosophers have said this for centuries. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote, The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He was saying the same thing. That obstacle in front of you isn't there to stop you. It's there to raise you, but you only see it that way when you elevate your thinking. Let me bring this closer to home. How many times have you faced something you thought would break you, and years later, you look back and realize that same experience made you stronger, wiser, more resilient? That's perspective. That's higher thinking. From the ground, it felt unbearable. From the mountaintop, it became part of your growth story. I'll give you an image you won't forget. Eagles fly higher than any other bird. They soar above storms while other birds are running for cover. Why? Why? Because they're built for altitude. When the storm comes, they rise with it. They don't fight the wind. They use it to go higher. That's what thinking higher is about. Stop flapping around at ground level with the pigeons. You weren't built to stay there. You were built to rise. And let me tell you, when you rise, you start to see things differently. The fear that used to hold you back, it doesn't look so big anymore. The opinions of people who doubted you, they start to fade into the background. The regret of past mistakes, you begin to see how they shaped you into someone wiser, someone tougher, someone ready. So here's the challenge. The next time you're faced with something that feels overwhelming, stop, breathe, ask yourself, what would this look like from a higher place? What would this look like a year from now? 5 years from now? Because when you raise your sight line, you raise your possibilities. The wall is only tall if you keep standing at the bottom of it. Change your altitude, and you'll realize it was never as big as you thought. Remember this, you can't live an elevated life with a ground level perspective. You know, one of the biggest traps people fall into when they're chasing success, it's comparison. Measuring their life against somebody else's scoreboard. Looking left, looking right. Always asking, am I doing as well as them? Do I have what they have? And the problem with that is simple. The more you compare, the more you lose sight of your own lane. See, thinking higher requires that you redefine what success even means in the first place. Yes. Because if your definition is borrowed, if it's based on somebody else's dream, you'll spend your whole life climbing a ladder only to find was leaning against the wrong wall. That's why so many people reach the top and still feel empty. They were chasing recognition instead of purpose. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with wanting the house, the car, the good life. But the danger is when those things become the definition of success instead of the products of it. True success, higher success, is about alignment. It's when what you do matches who you are. when your daily grind lines up with your deeper calling. That's the kind of success that lasts because it's rooted in something nobody can take away from you. Think about this. Every single person in this room has a unique blueprint, a set of gifts, talents, and desires that belong only to you. When you ignore that blueprint and start copying somebody else's plan, you're living below your potential, and you can feel it. That's why people get restless in jobs they hate. That's why some folks look successful on paper, but feel dead inside. Because real success is about stack hacking trophies. It's about living in truth. Psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who define success by intrinsic goals, like personal growth, connection, contribution, report higher levels of fulfillment and lower levels of anxiety than those who chase extrinsic goals like fame, money, or appearance. Why? Because intrinsic goals come from within. They're sustainable. Extrinsic goals depend on outside validation. And the moment you tie your worth to applause, you'll always be a prisoner to someone else's opinion. Here's what's wild. Some of you are already winning by your own definition, but you don't see it because you're too busy measuring yourself somebody else's highlight reel. That's a dense sense. You've got a loving family. You've got peace of mind. You've overcome storms that have broken other people. But instead of celebrating, you're scrolling on social media, comparing your behind the scenes to somebody else's carefully edited moment. That's how comparison steals joy. It blinds you to your own blessings. And I need you to hear this. The eagle never looks at the sparrow and says, "Man, I wish I had wings like that." Why? Because it knows its wings were built for higher skies. When you're an eagle, you don't compete for crumbs. You soar where only eagles can go. That's the posture of purpose. You stop lowering yourself to win battles you were never meant to fight, usually the weakest. So what does thinking higher look like when it comes to success? It means asking deeper questions. But what am I here to give? Not how do I beat them, but how do I become the best version of me? Because when you anchor success in purpose, you'll find yourself working with energy that doesn't burn out, because it's not fueled by competition. It's fueled by conviction. Let me put it this way. There are two kinds of climbers. One is climbing to be seen. The other is climbing because they were called. The first gets tired quick because they're chasing applause. The second has endurance because they're chasing destiny. Which one are you? Now, I'll be honest. Redefining success this way is not always easy. It takes courage to step off the path everybody else expects you to follow. It takes courage to say, "No, I don't want that corner office. No, I don't need to live up to your timeline. I'm building something that looks different." But that courage is the cost of authenticity. And in the long run, authenticity pays far better dividends than approval ever could. And I promise you, when you get clear on your own definition of success, comparison loses its grip. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling less than. You realize you're not late. You're on your schedule. You're not lacking. You're equipped for your lane. And you start celebrating other people's wins instead of resenting them because their success doesn't threaten yours. You understand that there's room at the table for everybody because you're not fighting for the same chair. So here's the question I want you to leave with tonight. What does success mean to you, really? Not to your neighbor, not to your boss, not to your parents, to you. Because until you answer that, you'll keep running someone else's race. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. Comparison is the thief of joy, but purpose is the engine of greatness. Stop chasing their definition and start living your own. Remember this, success without purpose is just achievement, but success with purpose, that's legacy. When you start thinking higher, it doesn't stop with you. That's the part most people miss. They think success is a solo mission. They think elevation is about climbing to the top of the mountain and planting your flag. They flischuth. But here's the truth, the highest level of thinking, the highest level of success isn't just rising yourself, it's how many people you bring with you. Because at some point, if it's only about you, it gets shallow. You can get the money, the title, the recognition. But if you look around and there's nobody else standing with you, it starts to feel empty. Fulfillment doesn't come from standing alone at the top. Fulfillment comes when you look back and see that your climb made it easier for somebody else to climb too. Now, I know the world teaches us a different philosophy. It says, look out for yourself. Protect your spot. Don't share your secrets. Keep your advantage. But that's ground level thinking. Higher thinking says the opposite. The more you pour into others, the more your influence grows. Your candle doesn't lose its light when it lights another. It multiplies, and the room gets brighter. Think about the people who have impacted history. They weren't just achievers, they were multipliers. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just fight for his own rights, he lifted generations. Mother Teresa didn't just seek personal peace, she poured compassion into others. Even in business, the greatest leaders aren't the ones who hoard success. They're the ones who build systems, platforms, opportunities for other people to win. That's legacy. Psychologically, this is powerful. Humans are wired for connection. When you help someone rise, when you mentor, when you invest in others, your brain releases oxytocin. The sane the same chemical that bonds families and builds trust. That's why lifting others doesn't just benefit. It doesn't just benefit them, it expands you. It makes your influence deeper, your relationship stronger, your joy more sustainable. And let's be real. None of us got here alone. Somewhere along the way, somebody lifted you. Maybe it was a parent, a teacher, a friend, a boss who gave you a shot. Maybe it was a stranger who believed in you at a time you didn't believe in yourself. Every one of us is standing on somebody else's shoulders. The question is, whose shoulders will you provide? This is where higher thinking really separates from ordinary thinking. Ordinary says, once I make it, I'm good. Higher says, once I make it, I'm responsible. Ordinary stops at success. Higher pushes into significance. And significance is about impact. It's about making sure that when you leave, the world is brighter because you were here. I'll tell you something I've learned from experience. People don't remember what you had. They remember how you helped. They don't remember how high you climbed. They remember how many hands you extended while you were climbing. That's why some of the richest people on earth are forgotten, and some of the simplest people are immortalized. It's not about what you take with you. It's about what you leave behind. And you don't need a platform, a title, or millions of dollars to lift others. Sometimes the most life-changing thing you can do is speak encouragement into someone who's doubting themselves. Sometimes it's opening a door, making an introduction, teaching what you know. Don't underestimate the power of planting seeds, because seeds grow into forests. Now here's the thing, when you start lifting others, some people will tell you, you're wasting your time. Focus on you. But those are people still thinking small. You've got to understand the law of life is sowing and reaping. The more you sow into people, the more you reap in growth, in wisdom, in opportunities. The universe has a way of returning to you what you give, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And let me warn you, lifting others isn't always convenient. It will cost you time. It will cost you patience. Sometimes it will even cost you comfort. But it will never cost you meaning. Meaning is priceless. Because at the end of your life, nobody's reading your bank account at your funeral. They're telling stories about how you made them feel, how you helped them rise, how you thought higher and pulled them up with you. So ask yourself, are you climbing alone? Or are you building a path others can follow? Are you holding your light close? Are you lighting the room? Because the real measure of greatness is not how high you go. It's how many people go higher because you were there. That's the mark of thinking higher. That's legacy thinking. And that's what turns a successful life into a significant one. Remember this, the highest form of success is not what you achieve. It's what you enable others to achieve.